Happy Friday in Soccer We Trust YouTube family. And if you happened to miss our exclusive interview with Gio Reyna, who is a Borussia Dortmund and USMNT national team star, we did it yesterday. Then make sure you go back and watch and then hit like and subscribe when you're there. You can do it now. Either way, we really appreciate you. So let's get after it. Yes. What is up, everyone? And welcome to Robin Fraser's favorite podcast of Soccer We Trust. I'm Jimmy Trashcan Cream Cheese Conrad alongside Charlie Chuckwagon Davies and Hollywood Heath Pearce. And even though we're not sure if we can top our last episode where we got an exclusive interview with Gio Reyna, and please go back and listen if you missed it, we're going to try. But first, a question. And Heath, I'm coming to you first. On a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being, I don't care if I make the World Cup roster or not, and 10 being, holy crap, we're less than 2 weeks away from me finding out if I'm going to represent my country at the World Cup, and I'm so nervous because it would be a dream come true, so it's hard for me to concentrate on anything else. Where would you be on this scale if you were in our player pool? Because I think this weekend is the biggest of the weekends, because next weekend, I feel like Greg Berhalter's already made his decisions.
Yeah, I mean, this weekend is, I just go back to, again, my cycle where we had like a week or something, 10-day camp or whatever it was, where like, it was like the last tryout. And that one was weird because you're in and amongst the group and then being like selected or not selected. And I always knew I was on the fringe as it was. And that one seems more stressful than now, where it's like, you're just controlling what you can control in your club scenario. And at least like, you know, you don't have to fly to Chicago and get yelled at by the Chicago fans being called a USMNT reject while you warm up at halftime the day after.
Here we go. Therapy session.
So when I think about that, I'm like, you know, it's a pretty good, I think it's the best case scenario for a lot of these guys, although you would wish the team could be together before the World Cup and spend some time together in a way that they won't now. But they've got to all be nervous. But I have a feeling Greg's having conversations and it's fluid. I think there was...
So he's breaking hearts behind the scenes instead of doing it in front of your face.
I don't know if he's breaking hearts behind the scenes, but I mean, because look, there's no way, like you can't give the news too soon, because we've seen already, right? Matt Turner's got a little bit of a knock. We saw Luca De La Torre's got a knock, like, so, but you are having conversations at least to know that, like, hey, you're on the, like, at least the 4, 5, 6 players that are on the fringe. And then the rest you can say, like, pending injury, you're in the team. And I think that's a way that you have to do that, because the mystery could be kind of overwhelming, right? So I think focusing on your club and focusing on these games at hand, knowing that you're, what are we, like, I don't know, 8 days out, 10 days out from the roster selection. It's got to be pretty nerve-wracking, regardless of how anybody tries to play it off as like, oh, you know, I'm just chilling, focusing on me. And you're like, nah, man, you're not sleeping at night.
So where are you scale? Where are you on the scale then? You at 10, or where are you if you're one of the guys?
I mean, Jimmy, I only know my own situation the way it was, and I was a fringe player. So, like, when it came
that would be
to
a
roster
10.
selection,
yeah,
it'd be a 10 for sure. Like, I would be pretty stressed out. But the world is much more connected than it was a decade ago, and so I think about that through that context of like being able to know like how you're actually playing versus like people being like, well, I don't know, kicker gave him a 3-star rating, so he must be doing okay in the game. You know what I mean?
We all know that you want that.
Build tabloid going like, oh yeah, he looked pretty good out there, but what's up with his shoes? You know, and then being like, that's cool. You know, that works.
That special text relationship with Mike Sorber. I know you always wanted that. Charlie, where are you on this scale?
Hey, hold on, real quick, Jimmy. I just realized with my denim jacket I've got on, like I'd like to be Hollywood Heath Ledger Conrad Pearce now. You know, I almost said Conrad.
Yeah. All right, I'll add Ledger to your
I got
or Gyllenhaal.
Yeah, or Gyllenhaal. Yeah, there's for those that can't see what Heath is wearing, he's got a denim jacket on, and it's got
straight off a mountain.
It's straight off a mountain. We'll go
there.
Hey,
you
Charlie
know anybody
Davies.
That's in tech, you gotta keep the tech cold, you know? You gotta keep the studio cold. And so that's why I got the jacket on. You know?
Charlie, where are you on the scale? I assume you're, as a normal human being, you'd be nervous at this point. And this is a big weekend. When we get into where the players are playing and who they're playing against, this is a really stiff test for some guys that could really dictate whether they make the team or whether they're going to be starters, right? There's different levels to why you'd be nervous, I'd say.
Yes. I would say it'd be more excitement than nerves. So I'd probably be more on the 3 range, 3 to 4 in terms of just making sure I'm healthy and I'm fit, but I'm excited. I wouldn't have any doubts of making the roster if I were in some players' shoes on the outside looking in. If I was a Sam Vines or, you know,
Joe Scally,
I am on a 10. I'm on a 12. But you know, Yunus Musa, Weston McKennie, Tyler Adams, you know you're going, but you just want to make sure you're fit. you're 100% ready to go. So there's the nerves of, I just want to make sure I don't get injured in the 5 games left before we head to Qatar. And then there's the, oh boy, I'm playing in my first World Cup. I get to represent my country, and we have a real chance to get out of this group.
Okay.
What about you?
Well, no, I'd be nervous. I'd be in the 10 range for sure. Very similar to Heath. I was a fringe player, so I was definitely never entirely comfortable that I was going to make the team. And so I needed that confirmation on Sports Center by Bruce Arena to actually see my name in lights that before I could really believe that I was.
Hold on, Jimmy.
Gonna be there.
On that, was there ever a time where there was another camp coming and you were like, was there a window where you were like, yep, call up, not even thinking about it, don't need to know? Remember, because they used to send out the preliminary roster in an email, and then you get the final roster. Was there ever a time, and I know I went through it almost every time I was like, man, I hope I get to that next roster, right? Was there a time where you felt that you had that comfort? I mean, coming out of a World Cup or going into a World Cup. Charlie, how about you? I mean, we'd all been in and out of national teams throughout our 10 years, but was there ever a time? I mean, we know Charlie's window of time where he was like, yeah, I'm not worried about getting
maybe January camps.
Well,
yeah, I wasn't.
Yeah, my first January camp. I was sitting there waiting, looking at my email, like, all right, come on, let that invitation come through. And then when you see it, similar to your first cap, you hear, that there's a possibility that you could be coming in. You're on 12, sitting there waiting and hoping. And then when you see it come through, and then I've been on the opposite end where you don't get that email and you're like, like it stings, it hurts. But all you can do is say, all right, I gotta keep going.
And to us on the outside, sorry, Jimmy, I wanted to say for us on the outside, looking at those moments, it's the difference between you and another player is so incremental, right? In your mind. And now for us as fans, like we could pick apart Zimmerman versus Long versus McKenzie and Eric Palmer Brown and all of them as defenders all day long. But when you're in that pool and you have that mentality, no matter who gets called up over you, you're still never going like they're better than me, right? And maybe that's the boundaries you create, but like that's the hard part is that when you don't get selected, it's never because you're like, oh yeah, that guy's better. Very rarely is that the case where it's like, whoever's competing with Landon Donovan for 15 years gets to say that. But anybody else is kind of like incremental differences between selections.
Yeah, no, I like that. And it's a nice segue into a tweet that I saw that I want Charlie to address, who didn't address it in our group text because there's a lot going on. Charlie's at Destination Brooklyn on Paramount Plus for the Champions League, rubbing shoulders with Thierry Henry, amongst others. And somebody, as I was sifting through stuff, doing research throughout the week, there was a tweet where somebody said Charlie Davies wouldn't even sniff being on this World Cup roster. And I was like, I gotta hear from Chuck about this. Chuck, what are you saying? What? Like it wasn't even he might have had a chance, but I don't see him. It was like he wouldn't have a sniff to make this World Cup roster, and I need to hear from the man himself, Charlie Davies. Well, the mic is yours.
The funny thing is I did see it, but I was like, I'm not taking the bait here. Like, what do I have to prove? Charlie,
Jimmy jumped in the water and took that bait right away, and then just brought it all.
I didn't respond to it. I just saw it and put it right into our group chat.
I would say Charlie 2.0 would even make this roster, right? That was me on 1.5 legs because my right leg was 1.5 inches shorter and I was injured. I think especially in that 2014-15 range when I was in the best version of my new self, when I had to, I adjusted to the limitations my body had. I was a different type of player. I still think I would have made this squad. Maybe might not have started, but for sure I'm on the plane to Qatar. Charlie 1.0 before my accident. Come on now.
That's another way of saying suck it, haters.
Like Charlie's saying that this roster is the worst one in the last few World Cups is what basically Charlie's saying.
And this was the thing that came out of the Paramount Plus when we were with Thierry Henry, and he was asked which generation is better, and he was like, it's not even close. It's the generation to my left. And that featured Clint, myself, obviously Mo Adu, but what I was saying is, that might be right now. Our generation is better because our generation is done. We did our thing. This generation has the potential to be better than us. That's not even a question, but they still have so much potential to fulfill yet. It's not done. Right. Where they're starting from is far greater than we were, but we had character. We had we had different players who had these attributes, and it all worked well together. And it was a grind, and we were very adaptable to whoever we were playing against. We knew when we were better, we could keep possession. We had players with flair. We could do all that. Versus when we had to play Brazil, Spain, Argentina, whoever it was, we rolled up the sleeves. We go, this one's not going to be pretty. If we want to win this game, we got to change our style of play, and it's a real team commitment. And we were able to do that. It was that flexibility. This team's still working through that. I don't have any doubts that they have the players and the potential to overcome all of us, but it's not a given. We all know that.
I love that insight, because I think there ultimately, when I scrape away everything that you said and try to break it down into one or two words, it's just we have a lot of unknown about this team. Okay, we've seen some evidence of it in certain games, World Cup qualifying, Nations League final, whatever it is, but we won't know until we know. And that's when the World Cup comes and the whistle blows, and we're going to figure out exactly who we are and what kind of character we have within this group and what that means for 2026. So we can talk about it and speculate it, but we won't know until we know.
One thing, Charlie, I know you want to jump in real quick, but I wanted to say this. And when I played under Schellas Heinemann at FC Dallas, he was insane. I just want to start with that. He said a lot of crazy stuff, but one thing he said to me that stuck with me, and it's probably the one thing that I took out of all the things that he said over a year, was just wasn't buying into potential. He was like, and he said, potential is just talent that's unfulfilled. And I remember thinking about that through the context of all this, is that like we often create these crutches of potential, right? But Charlie's right. In the context of all this, they could be better. They could be way better than any generation we've ever had. But it's still unfulfilled talent, right? It's not developed. It's not it's raw material still that needs to be shaped and molded. And as long as it is that, it will never be better than old generations. And so that's one quote that I think has stuck with me, that he said, that I think is really good context for this group right now.
And I would say this too. There's a lot of people like, Thierry's just bitter. He's old. He doesn't know our players. Thierry, Heath, I'm sure you're aware of it. He's a student. Like, he absolutely loves the game, where he watches it 24/7. He watches Major League Soccer. He knows all the players. Like, people are like, oh, he doesn't. He knows every player. I was testing him after dinner, because we did that whole quiz show on Champions League knowledge. I asked him Premier League questions, MLS questions, and he was getting them right. And I was like, oh, damn. Like, he's a student of the game. He knows it. So there's, on one hand, he's very bullish on certain things and certain generations, how everything had to be earned. Nothing was given.
Yeah.
But there's some things that you're like, oh yeah, I see that. And some are like, I don't know if I agree with that, or I never thought of it in that way. And I get where you're coming from. But I think for this team,
he went after Pulisic. He went after Pulisic on the whole, like, that's not an assist thing, where Pulisic drove inside, cut it back, drew 4 players over to open up a pass down the middle, who gets buried by Havertz, but he goes, that's not an assist. And that's, I think, what triggers everybody, where you're like,
of course. I mean, Jamie Carragher is a perfect example, right? But let me give you this story of Thierry. And this is what I think it goes into to Christian Pulisic. He goes like this, and I could listen to Thierry talk for 24 hours straight because of all the stories that he's coming out with. But Barcelona call him. They want to bring him to Barca. He turns it down. Now, the next year, he's at the training center at Arsenal. He looks at his watch. It's 12:30 p.m. Everybody's home. Every single player has gone home after training. And he's looking around. He's like, I'm not getting pushed here. I'm 29 years old. What am I doing? This is not a place for me to grow. So he picks up his phone and calls Frank Rijkaard and goes, hey, I'm ready to go to Barcelona. Barcelona had just won the Champions League. And the manager, Frank Rijkaard, goes, oh, you want to come now? Okay. Well, let me tell you this. My starting front three is Ronaldinho on the left, Lionel Messi on the right, and Samuel Eto'o up top. That's not changing. That's my starting lineup. Do you still want to come? And Thierry said, I'm coming. And he took that leap. Now, obviously, that's Thierry, but it just puts into perspective. He's going to challenge himself because he wants to be in that environment to get pushed. And
he struggled at Barcelona for a while, too, by the way, until he figured out. If you watch that, get the ball, give the ball, or whatever that documentary is, where it talks about until he was willing to run in behind and do all this dirty work off the ball that had nothing to do with him, he wasn't going to play. and then he had to learn to play
And talk
another way, which
about
is really interesting.
eating humble pie, right, Heath? It's like you've done all this. You've had this incredible career. Now you're playing on the wing, no more centrally, and you have to track back and defend a right back. And for somebody.
And by the way, that was during the time that Arsenal said, Arsenal board came out and said they basically had a blank check to give to Thierry to keep him there forever. But then there's also the other side of the story where Arsene Wenger is saying, like, basically this guy was becoming too much for our locker room, and we could have spent anything to keep him there, to get him there, and we were willing to let him go as well because he sort of just outgrew our locker room. You know, another I know this isn't the Thierry Henry show, but you get a lot of retrospect stuff from these kinds of guys that are very astute, right? I went with them to the Arsenal training grounds. We walked through it, and we walked through the reserve parking lot, and you could see all these crazy cars. And he just went through and he's like, look, when you came through here before, you didn't have any of this. But now you have all these kids that are signing 16, 17 years old, big first-team contracts so the club could keep them. And he started pointing through. He goes, you know, like $100,000 and up cars. And he's just pointing, going, never train with the first team, never train with the first team, never train with the first team. You know, that guy trains once in a while. That kid's not even old enough to drive. His mom has to drive him in his car every day, and walk through of like the old generation where like if you took more than 2 touches, you got kicked. So like there is some, you know, perspective of just generational shifts and things like that. But it's certainly he's got some of those wild stories.
Well, this current group then has their chance to prove Thierry wrong, to show how mentally tough they are and what kind of character they have with 3 games in the World Cup. So we'll see how they do. But before we get there, we have to preview this weekend because we're going to get some of our players taking on some very tough tests. I'm going to start on Saturday. Valencia, Yunus Musa, who's come back from injury and started 3 straight games, though they haven't won any of those 3 games. They're at home to Barcelona, who just crashed out of the Champions League, going to go drop down to the Europa League, but have been pretty excellent in La Liga, all things considered, minus losing to Real Madrid in El Clasico. Very curious to see how Yunus Musa plays in this one. I think it'll be a good test for him to go up against some of the best, let's say, young midfielders in the world. I think he'll go up against Pedri or Gavi, or hopefully he'll be running by the dinosaur named Sergio Busquets. But good test for him, Charlie Davies, to really cut his teeth against some very, very good players, especially because he's going to have to figure out how to have success against a team that's going to have a lot of possession. Not to say we're going to face a team in the World Cup that's going to be out and out like a Spain or the tiki-taka where they're trying to have 85% possession, and that's how they're going to possess you to death. But how he picks his spots, I think, will be really important to potentially keeping him sharp for what we're going to run into.
100%. This is a phenomenal match in terms of like the tempo and dealing with a team who can.
By the way, no, hold on real quick. Yunus Musa is out for the weekend.
Is he?
He's suspended on
sure?
yellow cards. Yeah.
You sure?
Yellow card accumulation. Yeah.
I didn't see that.
I didn't read that.
All right. Well, let's
great
move on
job.
to the next one. So Luca De La Torre, you know what?
I just saw that on soccer. I saw that on Soccer by Ives. So like saying he was a yellow card accumulation. So he's out for this one.
All right.
Let's go to Luca De La Torre.
Well, Luca De La Torre and Celta Vigo are going to take on Almeria.
Hold on, guys. He's out too. He's out.
He's out for 3 weeks.
No.
So okay, let's talk about De La Torre then in the context of what he brings to the table and the fact that we have our first game against Wales in 24 days, and apparently he's being reported he'll be out for 3 weeks. Do you take him? Heath Pearce, do you take him?
No. I mean, 3 weeks is never 3 weeks. We know that. Like 3 weeks is 2 weeks if you're trying to make a roster and you're at high risk. But if it's if it's an ankle, if it's, you know, that type of thing, no problem. If it's muscular, no chance you take him. You got no chance. Like, I don't think his role was big enough. I think he showed a lot of flashes, and I think he's a quality player. But between his role and his minutes is enough to keep him on. Now, having said that, you go yes or no is one thing if you make that binary, but like you also have to say then who are we taking instead? You know, like who are we going deeper into the roster? Does that give you a chance to bring a Paul Areola, different position, but still somebody different? Does that change things? Does that put Christian Roldan back in the conversation? I don't think so. So if you're saying Christian Roldan or Luca De La Torre, then what's that?
I think Malik Tillman is one that slides right in. You think of the guys that are playing consistently, you know. James Sands is playing Champions League with Rangers has played. I don't think he's a midfielder in my mind because he can't cover enough ground. And as a center back, I mean, we kind of need center backs right now, so maybe that's an option for him. But I think it opens up guys who are on the verge of playing.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens there, just with De La Torre's position, and then of course if he's not going to go and Greg makes his decision, who does get brought in? I think it does open it up a little bit to some possibilities. All right, let's keep it moving. Christian Pulisic and Chelsea.
Charlie's going to go into the comments. Here he goes.
He's going to the comments.
I know what he's going for.
The comments.
I see it. I know what he's going for. Get that finger ready.
He's taking the bait.
Oh, there it is.
Scored double digits in Sweden, but he should be there in Qatar. Man. No hate, just fact. Do you want me to score triple digits in Sweden? Is playing in Sweden an easy league? So I'm trying to understand that. And then I went to France and played against the league champions, Bordeaux, and scored a brace. Is that good enough to make the squad?
Clearly not. Yeah.
Come on,
George
Def Kiss.
Def Kiss chose violence today, and now he's running into it. He's just so everybody knows, Charlie. He said Charlie only scored double digits in Sweden, but he should be there in Qatar. No hate, just fact. And Charlie has given his retorts.
Def Kiss, I took the bait. Good job.
Might want to flip this one out moving forward. Yeah.
Charlie triggered Davies.
He got triggered today. We have a new nickname for Charlie. Charlie easily triggered Davies. All right, here we go. Christian Pulisic and Chelsea go to Brighton. So Graham Potter goes back to the Amex Stadium to face his former club. Christian Pulisic coming off a start midweek in the Champions League. And I think having an assist, or at least did enough to create the assist for Kai Havertz to get a very good shot off and a good goal. But I don't know if he's going to start because we just don't know what his status is. Sometimes he does, sometimes he doesn't. He was a surprise start here, but this is a big game for Chelsea, all things considered. Obviously, Brighton's going to want to get some revenge for losing their manager halfway through. Any thoughts on this, Heath Pearce, with Christian Pulisic? And I mean, obviously, we want him to start. We want him to get valuable minutes, continue to prove his worth. I just don't know if we're going to see it.
Yeah, I always go back to just the roster that Chelsea have. There's no reason to start Pulisic if you don't want to, right? Regardless of the form that he's in, they've just got depth and quality and more, some equally established, but some more established and more experienced players. When you think about Sterling, when you think about Aubameyang, when you think about just like, again, a wider base of players that you can go to. The upside that I would say for that is that he's kind of fallen into my Weston McKennie category, where it's like Weston McKennie going through tough times at Juventus doesn't bother me. He's one of those players that I'm like, high, lows, whatever. He's just going to be consistent. He's going to play, and it's going to be manager selection at a big club. Either you play him or you don't. And he continues to find his way back onto the field. Christian Pulisic, different circumstance, but at least has that mentality that when he's getting his minutes, he looks active, he looks confident, he looks like he wants to do something. So while I'd love to sit and nitpick on whether or not he should be able to start or not, or whether he should be playing in this squad, I'm content knowing that seemingly his mindset is in a positive place, which is what I want.
Now, what I'll say, what I found interesting in the Champions League
also
game,
fire Graham Potter if he doesn't start Christian Pulisic
against Salzburg, is that Graham Potter put a 3-5-2 together and had Christian Pulisic, which looked like a wing back, Charlie, and then on the other side, Raheem Sterling. And it didn't really feel like it was flowing that well to start. But it is interesting when Pulisic, because Tuchel tried it too at some point with Christian, where he picks up the ball and he's got a little bit more runway to run at players with speed, but you're still trying to figure out a way to get him the ball in those areas. He's not as far up the field. And they had Havertz and Aubameyang up top. So it feels like Graham Potter's still tinkering a little bit, but it's interesting to see Christian Pulisic at wing back.
He's too far away from goal at wing back. And let's be real, wing back, you're defending more than you are attacking. Unless you're playing a really inferior opponent, but you are constantly running up and down defending and not really focused on figuring out ways to run at back lines. And I think we were talking about it with most of the guys as far as how Christian should be featured in this Chelsea lineup. And earlier in the season, Mason Mount was not playing well. Christian should have been playing over Mason Mount. Mason Mount wasn't playing well. Kai Havertz wasn't playing well. We saw Timo Werner struggle, not playing well. Still gets the
Sterling not playing well.
But Sterling's Sterling. I have no problem with Sterling.
You can't argue if he's out of form. He's still there's still starters for the England national team. It's just the reality.
Yeah, like he's going to play, and that's not an issue. But Mason Mount, for me, Christian gives you a little more. I think he's more dynamic than Mason Mount. He's quicker. I think he's better on the dribble. Mason Mount can definitely spray the ball better, and he can shoot from distance. I think he has a better shot than Christian. But when Christian's high up the pitch and he's effective in 1v1 situations, he is a better player for me than Mason Mount. But they gave Mason Mount time, and that now Mason Mount's in form. So he's not going to play over any of the three because he's not a withdrawn striker or a striker. So it makes it very difficult for him to play. And in those situations, I think it's good that he's there because he has to fight and push. But then I just feel like he's had that unfair treatment when compared to other players. And we all know when you're dealing with English internationals in the English Premier League, it's an uphill battle no matter what. And you're the only way you're going to stay on the pitch is if you're scoring a brace a game. You're constantly having an impact, and it's going to be very difficult for Christian, I think, to get into that rhythm given the limited opportunity. So I think after the World Cup, you start thinking about what's next, where's a good fit. But right now, all he can do is focus on the task at hand, and that's playing and trying to make an impact every minute he gets.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think he is making. It feels like it. I'll emphasize feels like he's making the most of his minutes and having an impact, especially on the attacking side of the ball. Even if it's those hockey assists or creating the space for the guy to create the assist or whatever it is, he's still doing enough to be a catalyst for the attack. What's interesting though is that there are some rumors that Leeds are interested. Newcastle obviously have shown some interest in Pulisic as well, and I wonder if he just needs to change leagues and maybe go to somewhere else to kind of, I don't know, get recharged a little bit, a different mentality, different league, different style to have that success. Obviously, we can get into that a little bit more.
I think La Liga would be great for him.
It would be great. It'd be fun.
La Liga would be a great league for Christian.
Yeah, there'd have to obviously be a team that could set up. I mean, Sevilla does a really nice job of getting their wingers involved, and so that'd be an interesting spot. They could use some help. All right, let's move it on. In the Premier League, Fulham are taking on Everton at home at Craven Cottage. Tim Ream and Anthony Robinson are going to try to continue their hot start this season. Fulham are currently in 7th, and they're going to be taking on Everton. Fulham, I think, are in a nice spot under manager Marco Silva to stay up. I don't think they're too far off. I think maybe 40 points would get you to stay up, probably less. They're at 18 points right now. And it's looking like that Tim Ream is probably, at least in my humble opinion, I think he's going to be considered as one of the center backs for the World Cup roster. I can't confirm or deny where I'm getting my sources, but it's looking like he is starting to be a better bet to make that happen. And that shouldn't be a surprise to anybody. He's a captain of the Premier League team, and they're doing very, very well. As our resident left footer on this show, Heath Pearce, any thoughts on Tim Ream?
No, I got.
Of course. What do you got?
I want to ask the. No, I won't. No, I mean, I think we're all pretty aligned with Tim Ream. But my question back to you is, how much of that, right? When we talk about, like, you can't really plan opportunity, right? You go out of that last camp, you look at the fact that we've got Chris Richards, who was a lock into the roster, I think, leading up to his injury. You've got Robinson out, was a lock at the time of his injury going into the World Cup, a starter in our national team, right?
Miles Robinson.
You can't really Miles Robinson, yeah. You can't really plan that type of opportunity. But my question is, how much of this is a lack of confidence or trust going into this, right? So maybe if you had one of those two players, would Tim Ream be in the conversation? And how much of it is actually his performances and the quality that he is bringing week in and week out in the Premier League? Because we were all sort of like, hey, look, I think Tim Ream has made sense to make this roster for a long time, knowing that if this team wants to sit deeper, he's fine. If you want to be able to pass through lines, he's who you want on the field. You want to play a high line? Probably not going to be the best option against a pacey squad or somebody that could leave you exposed. But circumstantially, he's going to make sense in the national team. So how much do you think is his inclusion or his potential to make this World Cup roster is because of the poor form or because of the quality of his form right now or injuries? Or do you think it's literally opportunity is all sort of blended into this one thing and it's going to lead to this moment of him making a World Cup roster?
I think that it is a combination of everything that you mentioned, because even leading into Japan, Saudi Arabia, if Tim Ream hadn't gone to the World Cup at that point, we'd be like, yeah, okay, it's fine. You know, he's a little bit older. We've seen what we're going to see from him. We've got younger players that we think can do the job. Fine. We go to Japan, Saudi Arabia. We're having a real struggle playing out of the back. We're playing against opponents that are prepared for clogging the middle of the field, so our top attacking players can't really do much when they do get it. Or we're now trying to jam passes in there and force it in there, and we're struggling. And now I think it makes it more apparent that we need a good ball-playing center back. John Brooks is out of the equation for whatever reasons. Who knows? He's out. So the only other option in that spot, especially a left footer on the left center back spot, that's Matt Beasler was very good at this back in 2014, It's different to have a left footer there because they can hit that switch a little bit more blind. You know what I'm talking about, Heath. But if you have a right footer there, you have to open up your body to hit the switch, and that makes it a little bit
not
more
even a switch. It's just penetrating balls on your strong foot. When the flow of the game is pressing you towards the line, you have to be able to comfortably hit penetrating balls to break down lines of passes and lump the ball comfortably over the top. Like all those control things that we overlook because primarily you have mostly right-footed center backs.
So let's say it like this. If Fulham was getting overrun right now and just getting absolutely crapped on and Tim didn't look good, I don't think we'd be considering him. But when you look at him and how well he's played, the fact that he's being trusted as a captain, we definitely need some leadership in our team, especially in that part of the field, that we struggled passing from that spot, that position against Japan and Saudi Arabia, our two most recent games, and everything else that's going into it with injuries. I don't think Chris Richards is going to go to the World Cup. I think it's getting too late. Guys hasn't played many meaningful minutes, and time's just running out on him. Does he have the talent? Yes. Is he going to be ready? I just don't know if you can give him that chance. When you have Jimmy, somebody like Tim Ream available. I'm just saying, when you have somebody like Tim Ream available who's sharp, I think you go with that.
But based on Charlie's math, he's doing his rehab amongst very good players.
I get that, but Tim Ream's playing in the Premier League as well, so you can't really use the Premier League example against me. So anyway, a big game for Fulham. So yeah, I don't want to trigger him easily here, Charlie Davies. I want to hear Charlie's thoughts on Brendan Aronson, Tyler Adams, and Jesse Marsch going to Anfield to play Liverpool. Another big test for our players. Tyler looks like he's going to start after missing last week. That's good news, of course, for all of us that support the U.S. men's national team, given how important he is to the team and how valuable he is to how we like to play. This is a big, big test. This is let's leave the Jesse Marsch. I think we talked about his situation enough, but in terms of what Brendan and Tyler can bring to the table here. And this is a Liverpool team, Charlie, that's vulnerable domestically, but looked very good against Ajax midweek in the Champions League. They seem to potentially be getting past their sluggish start. What do you say about this game and for our players?
I don't know if you could say that they're over it. I mean, they definitely beat Ajax in the Champions League, but they lost to Nottingham Forest, and Nottingham Forest was still able to get 10 shots and 7 of them were on target. They gave Leeds the ball, which is fine, but they were very effective in the way they got at goal. And so I think for Leeds, they're going in, I think, with the confidence, because once their backs are against the wall. I mean, you feel for Jesse Marsch because he's got the axe around floating around his head. At any moment they could just say, no, we're going to go in a different direction, and that's not great to have that. And especially for Brendan Aronson and Tyler Adams, because they were brought there to play for Jesse Marsch. So you want to get behind your manager. You want to obviously have a big performance against Liverpool, because now Tyler Adams' name is starting to get floated around with different clubs. So Manchester United in particular, if you can show well against Liverpool, maybe you obviously put your name in that hat as well. So it's a big match for both of them. And again, you're playing against some full internationals and guys that will be featuring in the World Cup. So if you have a great showing, that only gives you more confidence and obviously helps lift Leeds off the basement floor in the English Premier League.
Yeah, they're on a 9-match winless streak, Leeds. So Jesse Marsch definitely feeling the pressure on the hot seat, as it were. I don't think there was any, even if they were playing well, that there was going to be any hope that they go get a result at Anfield. I think it's going to be next week when they play at home against Bournemouth, and then when they play against Wolves in the League Cup, that will determine Jesse Marsch's fate, given how they perform. They can only have so many. Well, we played well for 75 minutes and still lose the game. They can't have that. And it's being reflected in Jesse's press conferences that he's getting a little tired of how that's going. So we'll see if they can kind of fix this broken record. And I'm excited to see Tyler and Brendan go up against, as you said, Charlie, some of the best players in the world. All right, we're going to take our first and only break of In Soccer We Trust. When we come back, we got some Bundesliga to talk about. We got some Eric Palmer-Brown taking on PSG, Weston McKennie and Juve doing their thing against Lecce, and the MLS Playoffs. The final 4 teams remain. Who is going to make it to the final? Come back and hear our thoughts. Don't go anywhere.
The UEFA Champions League on Paramount Plus. 9 months of heart-stopping, hold-your-breath exhilaration. That's brilliant! With more magic and more drama. While the former Bavarian nails the back of the net in Barcelona, an American trades his stars with zebra stripes, and a Norwegian creates sky blue spectacles. Oh, so stream every sweat-soaked second of regulation time, stoppage time, and extra time. Beyond magnificent! This is the best of the best of the best. This is the UEFA Champions League. Stream every match live, exclusively on Paramount Plus.
Welcome back to In Soccer We Trust. I'm Jimmy Conrad alongside Heath Ledger, Gyllenhaal, and Charlie Easily Triggered Davies. And we got some Bundesliga action to talk about. I'm just going to whip through it, and Heath, you can jump in on and decide which one you think is the most important. We got Kevin Paredes, who got his first start of the season for Wolfsburg last weekend, and their 2-2 draw with Bayer Leverkusen. They take on Bochum, so we'll see if he gets a back-to-back start. That would be very cool. We got Gio Reyna. Paul, hopefully, after 2 consecutive starts, gets another start against Eintracht Frankfurt. That game's happening on Saturday at 12:30 p.m. Eastern on ESPN+. On Sunday, we got Union Berlin taking on Borussia Mönchengladbach. So we have Jordan Pefok taking on Joe Scally. Those are the big names and the games in Bundesliga. Which one stands out for you, Heath Pearce?
Kevin Paredes. That's one that I was just like, while you were saying that, I was thinking about, man, what was it like the first time that I played matches? I think I was 22 when I got to Germany, so a little bit older than him. But I just remember the difference between Denmark and Germany being like, oh man, this striker that I'm playing against, or winger, is doing all the classic things like checking two, running over the top, checking back, just running me ragged. And when I think about that in the context of like Kevin Paredes getting 17 minutes here, 20 minutes here, now getting a start, it's such a big leap now for him that I hope that he continues to get those starts and gets to feel like the weight of the weight of the game there, the speed of the game. I think is something different. So he's the one that I'm most looking forward to. The other ones are really exciting as well, given the context of the year. But when I think about beyond 2022 World Cup, he's a player that has. I mean, I don't know if anybody listening or watching this remembers him from DC, but super potential talent as a fullback or as a winger, just unbelievable on the ball and so explosive that if he can get those minutes consistently now in the Bundesliga, I'm stoked.
Well, that's what we need, right? To put a button on that conversation from earlier. We need more players with potential in our national team, Heath Pearce, right? Unfilled, raw potential.
No, not in the national team. Not in the national team, And by the way, Jimmy, I just wanted to shout out to everybody in the comments because they've just gone off and decided they were going to jump into their own conversation, and they're just going back and forth with each other over there, which I appreciate. We're just trying to provide the platform for people to have some good, solid conversation. Even if they don't want to listen to us, they're fighting with each other. Which
YouTube chatters, you guys are fam. I love you guys. I love the back and forth. Let's go.
All right, so Charlie, we got Eric Palmer-Brown in Troyes. He was captain last week. That's a pretty big deal. We'll see if he's captain again. Taking on PSG, that'll be a big test for them. I think he's on the precipice of maybe breaking in to this roster if Chris Richards is out for sure. So just if he plays well against the front three of Neymar, Messi, and Mbappe, then I think you could be like, hey, that's my calling card at that point if I'm going to give Greg Berhalter one last look at what I'm capable of. We got Weston McKennie and Juve, as I mentioned before, taking on Lecce. Juve have won 2 straight Serie A games. That's the first time they've done that all season, but they're coming off a 4-3 loss to Benfica, though Weston scored. So he likes to hit the back of the net in games where they need him to, but unfortunately it wasn't enough for them to get a win, and it looks like they might be dropping down to the Europa League or getting knocked out completely. We got Serginho Dest, didn't travel with Milan to their big win against Dinamo Zagreb in the Champions League, but maybe he'll be healthy for this. I don't think he will be. I think they're going to rest him, but keeping our eyes on that. And then we got Timothy Weah, who came off the bench once again for Lille in their 4-3 win over Monaco. We'll see, though. He hasn't started yet. They're taking on Olympique Lyon. So that will be a big game as well, Lille versus Lyon. And out of those ones, before we get into the MLS playoff preview, which one stands out for you? Which one are you most interested in watching?
If I had to say it, I think watching Eric Palmer-Brown, because those 3 right now are in sync. When you Messi, Neymar, and Mbappe,
unreal.
They're playing at the highest level. And if he can show that he's mobile enough to deal with them and cover and just anticipating and showing his knowledge of the game, that's a huge confidence boost for Greg, but also for Eric Palmer-Brown, just to show he's ready for this competition. But I'm also interested to see Reyna, the Pefok Scally, if Pefok can show, well, he hasn't scored in a while, but he's playing every game. He's starting.
And in the Europa League, yeah.
That's for me, that's enough. You don't have to score every match as a striker. If you're playing every match, and we know his strengths, he's not going to be starting in a single striker formation, but a great option off the bench. That for me, he has to be a part of this 26-man roster.
I think as we inch closer, though, I think Ream and Pefok are in. I like at some point, some picks just make sense. given their form, given how they fit into the system, given that they solve problems that we maybe don't have with some of the other players in our team. And I would be really surprised if they're not in at this point, given that. So that's me putting my
Reach.
I'm feeling Reem and PFOC are going to be in. All right, let's talk a little MLS Cup playoffs.
MLS.
Our final four. We have the number 1 seed, LAFC, taking on the number 2 seed, Austin FC in the West, and the number 1 seed, Philadelphia Union, taking on the reigning champions, NYCFC, who have been absolutely lights out since the playoffs started. I mean, they have just been a different gravy, all things considered. Let's go West first with our resident LAFC superfan, Hollywood Heath Ledger, Dylan Pierce. Heath, LAFC lost to Austin twice this season. Once at home, 2-1. And that's where Josh Wolf, the manager of Austin FC and our former teammate with the national team, went to LA the first time around, sat back, and just let LAFC have the ball, then hit them a couple times, 1-2-1. Then when they played again in August, Austin FC actually played on the front foot and beat LAFC quite handily, 4-1. So this Austin FC team does have the capability. Diego Fagundes in particular, 2 goals and 2 assists over those 2 games. If they keep an eye on him, maybe LAFC can figure this out. But I'm hearing maybe Carlos Vela is not 100% healthy. Is that he doesn't always feel 100% healthy at any point, Heath Pearce? Give us your preview on this.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a tough one, but it's when I look at the way that they match up together, regardless, it's going to be, I think, a high scoring match. They're going to go at each other. I don't expect Austin to play too conservative. I mean, they'll play some conservative because they're playing away from home, but I still see LAFC being the better team in this one because there's a few different ways in which LAFC now have built depth that they can change their style of play if something's not working, or change the way in which they sort of build up or attack or try to find their opportunities. But Austin FC, I mean, I know they're at that level of like petty right now. Of all the, if you've seen all the things that they've been posting of like all the experts having them finish like bottom of the West and things like that. But they've been good all year long, scoring goals. They've got Drusy, who's just unbelievable as well, and has been in consistent form. You need all of those pieces plus more. And I just think when I put those two together and the home field advantage of LAFC and them having that same type of form and that same type of quality, whether it's from Arango or Vela or across the board, I think LAFC still come out on top and are going to be hosting MLS Cup. Having said that, one-offs, you just don't know. It's going to be an unbelievable game.
I want your thoughts on this one too, Charlie, before we pivot over to the East, because I just feel like it's difficult to beat any team 3 straight times in a season. And I think maybe Austin just going to run out of luck at this point. What I find interesting about the stats, when you look at the overall regular season stats, LAFC were the best transition team in the whole league, but only 8th best when it comes to possession. And so I wonder if Austin can sit back, especially to start first 15, 20 minutes, absorb a little bit of all that energy, especially from the fans that they're going to get. And if they can keep it 0-0, then they can start to find their way into the game, obviously trying to find Driussi as much as possible. How do you see this one playing out, Chuck?
I see LAFC winning this one. I know Austin is better at set pieces and when Driussi's in open space, but I think LAFC are going to neutralize that and look to possess the ball a little bit more because they've dropped off, or they're going to look to counter. I mean, RSL jumped up to that 2-0 lead early. Mm-hmm. I think if LAFC score first and it forces Austin to be a little bit more aggressive, it's just going to create so much more space for Bouanga, for Arango, for Vela. Mm-hmm. And for me, LAFC have enough playing at home on top of that. I think the 2 losses to Austin help LAFC tremendously going into this game. The expectations of like, oh, we're going to win, we're home, those go away because they keep looking at that 4-1 smacking in LA. So you have that to say, guys, we're chasing Austin because the
4-1 was away from home.
2-1.
It was a 2-1 at home. But by the way,
last
on
match was 4-1,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Yes.
No. Was it? No. The
last time they
match
played was 4-1.
Yeah.
It was 4-1 in
Austin.
End of August.
That's fresh. That's fresh
in Austin. But it's also worth mentioning in that game that was the one and done where they said, let's put Arango, let's put Vela, and let's put Gareth Bale, 3 people who want the ball at their feet, and see what we can happen. Let's put all the same player on the field at the same time. And then after that game, they were like, well, we said we would do it once, and we did it away from home against the team that was fighting for first place in the West. We're never doing that again. And that was literally the end of the sort of Bale as a starter experiment and the Vela and Bale kind of like, like they were basically all coming underneath and they had no verticality whatsoever. Arango can provide a little bit of that, but that was an experiment that failed that day. The other one where it was Musovski up top. Again, you're talking about completely different team than what they have now, as they've kind of gone into the playoffs. And that was sort of an experimental phase. Having said that, if you're Austin, you look at it and you go, I don't care. It's our 11 against their 11. Doesn't matter who you put out. We outfought them. We beat them like they literally outcompeted LAFC in both those games. And I think that's an important factor, especially in the playoffs, if you're willing to play ugly.
Yeah. Well, another stat too that I've seen around the internets is that from the beginning of the season until the middle of August, LAFC had scored more set pieces than any other team in the league. Since then, they've only scored once. Now, that was the game winner against the LA Galaxy this past week in the playoffs to win 3-2. But that is, to your point, Charlie, now they're going up against somebody in Austin that is very good on set pieces. And I know this isn't the defensive side of the ball, but I think if LAFC really just want to go not only win this game, but go on to win the whole thing, they're going to have to be a little bit sharper and get a goal or two on set pieces to get them to hold that trophy at the end. Do you agree?
Jimmy, cream cheese, Conrad. Spot on.
Thank you.
Spot on. And I say, let's go over to the Philadelphia Union versus New York City FC.
Let's do it.
And you're talking about Bedoya, who is questionable. Will he be healthy? I think he needs to be in this game.
Would you start him if he could only go 30 minutes?
No.
Okay.
You can't start him. If he can play 45 to 60, then you start him. I'm always if you can play 45 minutes, then, and it's just about fatigue, then you can play 60. You could, it depends on the game, but you should be expected to play more than 45 minutes if you can play 45 minutes. I think in a case of, he can only give us 10 or 15, then you for sure can't start him, or 20. But this is a game where I look at Philadelphia Union saying, we're just going to keep the narrative on, we got to get revenge on New York City FC instead of being the top team in the East, and we're scoring all these goals at home and we're unbeaten at home. It's not about that. It's about last year, rematch. Keep the focus on, we have to chase New York City FC. We have to get back at them. We have to dominate, and not so much, we're the big team in the East, and this is a New York City FC that doesn't have Tati Castellanos, and we're the better team, and we've shown it. So I think that's what's playing in the Union's favor. But I think Bedoya has got to be available.
Okay, and if he isn't, I assume Jack McGlynn, who is one of our talented youngsters, would get the start. And obviously, he's been performing very well for Philly when he gets his opportunities. Now, just to remind everybody, Philadelphia, they had the most goals this season in any team of MLS, and they gave up the least amount, and yet they weren't the Supporters' Shield winner. That's unfortunate for them. But they've obviously done it on both sides of the ball. They have Andre Blake, who got goalkeeper of the year, Jacob Glesnes, who got defender of the year, Jim Curtin just got named as the MLS coach of the year. So everything's going right for them, but they still have to go out there and get the results. Heath Pearce, how much do you think last year plays into how Jim Curtin, the manager, is motivating his guys, if at all? Because just to remind everybody else on some fun facts, last season, they made Philadelphia Union play against NYCFC at home when they missed 11 players, many of their core guys, 7 or 8 of their core guys, to COVID. NYCFC were down 1-0 and ended up finding a way to come back in. You could just see the Philly players that probably didn't play a lot, getting a little bit tired. NYCFC scored 2 late goals, 2-1, booked their ticket to MLS Cup. Do you think that factors into it, a little revenge here? Do you think that Jim's going to use that card to play? Or do you think, like, hey, we're just the best team, NYCFC, for all the reasons that Chuck said, without Tati Castellanos in particular, but they still have Maxi Morales, who's been, God damn it, he's been good in these.
But he's questionable too.
He's unbelievable. That little
and
guy,
Maxime Chanot is out.
Maxi Morales. God, he's so good. What do you say, Heath Pearce? What's your prediction on this?
Again, it's one of those things. If you're in the locker room, you're channeling last year, knowing that you got screwed out of. You were 90 minutes away from a final, and the team that played you, and you were a better team in better form, and you had to play it. Went on to win MLS Cup, and now you're 90 minutes away at home with the best team in the league, the best defense in the league, the best scoring attack in the league. What more do you need to be able to beat this NYCFC team? When you think about all of the things you need for motivation, it all comes down. It comes down to all of that. So I still think, even though if I were to take all the games I've watched in the playoffs and say if there's one team based on how they played in the playoffs that I don't want to play, it's probably NYCFC right now. They look really good and confident, and not necessarily over a flow of 90 minutes, but they look lethal in terms of like, if you make the mistake, they have this mindset that they will kill you. And so I wouldn't want to play them, but if you're the Philadelphia Union, you kind of want that second chance. You want like the soccer gods to come back and right all of the wrongs that they went through last season. So I still think Philly Union are going to win this one and come out to LA for an MLS Cup.
Yeah, I think that even though I said it's going to be hard for Austin to beat LAFC 3 straight times, Philly beat NYCFC both times this time around. But for all the reasons, I guess I just want to see the top seed in the West take on the top seed in the East for it all, for 90 minutes to say this is actually the best team over the course of the season. And that is what I think we want to see, we need to see, with all due respect to Austin and NYCFC, who have been very good this season as well. So final thoughts. Let's call this a show. Heath Pearce, I'll come to you first. Final thoughts before we let everybody go and they get to enjoy their weekends, and then we'll see them on Monday.
Just shout out to Rich Orozco at LAFC. Just got me some tickets for the
here we go. Shameless plug alert.
Conference final. I can take my kids, which is nice. It's not hard to get tickets for me, or anybody that's on this thing, but to be able to bring my kids to another game, that's going to be a lot of fun. And it's the middle of the day, so hopefully they don't fall asleep this time. So I'm excited for that. Yeah.
And Charlie, final thoughts for you. Any tickets from the Kraft family to go to Philadelphia Union game?
Hey, I'm a former Union player. I can make the phone call.
Hey,
Charlie, what costume are you wearing to the Philadelphia Union game this weekend? You know, to do like a little punch with your.
He's wearing his old Philadelphia Union jersey. Is what he's going to wear.
Charlie dresses as Charlie Davies in the national team every year for Halloween, which is great. You know.
And then people walk by and be like, he couldn't play for the current team. I know that because he only scored double digits in Sweden. That's not good enough.
For sure.
All right, everybody, we're going to end it there. So thank you for listening to In Soccer We Trust, as always. So on behalf of producer Des, producer Alex, Charlie Chuck Wagon Davies, Hollywood Heath Pearce, I'm Jimmy Trash Can Cream Cheese Conrad saying thank you as always, and we'll see you next week. Have a great weekend. Later.